This means we are live, guys, in French.
I love it. Hi, my name is Michael Waitze, and welcome back to eCommerce Undercover. As always, I am joined by my esteemed, I don't even think he knows what that means, co-host. What's your name again?
My name is Martin Ronfort,
Martin.
and I know what steamed means.
Esteemed, not steamed. We are joined today by Riki Hooker. Riki is the general manager at Global eCommerce Experts. And we were joking before we started recording, Riki. We were going to ask you what you're experts in, but it's in the name, right?
It's just it's whatever it needs to be as long as it's e-commerce.
Exactly, it's in the name. How are you doing, Riki?
I am exceptional, thank you, guys. Thanks for having me on.
That is awesome. It's great to have you on. Where are you based right now?
Right now, I am desk sharing with our CEO in our office in Southampton. We have a big warehouse move for our fulfillment center this week. So we've got everything packed in boxes and crates, and there's pallets of goods everywhere and trucks outside loading things up. So we're right in the middle of a move to a new fulfillment center. So I'm in Southampton, England.
I love it. It's really interesting to me when people think about e-commerce, right? They don't think about the physical side of it. They just think about websites, payments, gateways, all this other stuff. But in the back end, there's actually a warehouse and people driving trucks, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're an e-commerce seller and you're based in one part of the world and you want to sell truly globally, then you need somewhere to stage your kit to be able to put that, into theater, wherever that might be, whether you're selling it yourself or whether you're selling it on on an e-commerce platform. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, that's an essential part of the process, and the journey that those goods go through is it's quite spectacular, actually, in terms of the efficiency and the process of how that all works.
I wasn't even going to go down this route, but I'm really curious. You've been at this for a long time. Have you noticed a change in the way you run the warehouses, like even in the last 5 years or 6 years? You know what I mean? Because they must have changed a ton, no?
Yeah, I think automation's played a big key of that. Robotics in the larger fulfillment centers, especially the platform fulfillment centers, those types of efficiencies. But in essence, it's mostly about scale. As e-commerce has grown, the scale and the requirements and just the sheer volume has changed the face and the landscape of what e-commerce looks like, because what was traditionally bricks and mortar plus some retail plus some e-commerce selling on top of that, now the kind of behemoth of e-commerce has taken over, and the scale of that requires a very different approach. And then add on top of that the expectations of timescale. What was acceptable to be 4 or 5 days to your door is now an hour or 2 hours, or at least next day to your door. So all of that journey just gets compressed into the time available to be able to do it. So the expectations of the client and the scale, the two things that have changed massively.
Yeah, I mean, when I always tell this story, but when I ordered my first book from Amazon, I was living in Tokyo, and I didn't even think about how long it was going to take me to get there. I mean, how long it was going to take the book to get there. As long as I could order it and I could get it, it just seemed like magic to me, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, and there is still an element of magic that goes on behind the scenes in terms of getting things to people, wherever that might be in the world, and joining up the dots of where that piece of stock is, who that's owned by, and how that gets to you, and then the money that you pay, how that works its way back to that person into their bank, and and goes on to helping them live their life.
Yeah, look, I don't think I've ever said this out loud on a podcast before, but I actually worked in a Kmart distribution center in Pennsylvania when I was in college. That's how I paid for part of my college. Was I worked in a warehouse in a distribution center, and I used to unload trucks, drive pallets around, put them on conveyor belts. I don't think we barcoded stuff, but to be honest, it was so long ago, I don't remember. But I have like this really kind of nostalgic feeling about warehousing. Anyway.
Look where you've ended up. Just look where you've ended up.
Believe me, I took a lot of flack inside that warehouse. I didn't have a name. My name was not Michael. My name was College Boy. So
that you should keep that. That'd be good.
I think
now.
I should keep it. I'd like it now, actually.
Yeah.
But I think this is really interesting. Literally, yeah, the evolution between the management of the warehouses in the old days of Michael working there, and nowadays. And for me, who kind of like live my whole life with e-commerce. Almost,
right. It's interesting though, right?
Yeah, like for me, like one day delivery, 3 days delivery is normal for me, right? Like when you tell your story of ordering your book and just you wish the book gonna arrive.
Didn't care when, just didn't care when. When it showed up, it was like magic. Yeah, I was so happy.
But like for me, like, you know, like if it's more than 3 days for my whole life, it's been really annoying, right?
The impatience.
And I think that's what I mean by the expectation. That's how the expectation is compressed, because as you know, as the barriers to the speed of getting things to the end user have decreased in technology, then the rest of the industry, everyone else is always playing catch up to, you know, to the fastest and most innovative. But that's just the evolution of any new industry in any new sector, that technology kind of filters its way through different tiers of the industry for them to for those, you know, lower tiers to be able to catch up with, you know, the speed and the infrastructure of what's required to get things to you.
So from your perch, right, how important is speed of delivery? I know it may seem like an obvious question, but when you're talking to people about implementing great e-commerce solutions, how important is it to have speed of delivery?
You know, I think speed of response and communication and delivery, so speed in all aspects, is one of the most important aspects from the client's perspective, or the end user's perspective. Insofar as if you wanted to go out and buy yourself, you know, a new widget, whatever that might be,
right,
and you said, right, I'm going to go to this bricks and mortar store, that's immediate. You know, you get in your car, you drive there, you park in the parking lot, you go to the store, you get the goods, you pay for them when you come away, and you have that thing there and then.
Yeah.
So I think there's a sense of immediacy that's come with e-commerce. I decide that I want to purchase something. I want that in my hands as fast as physically possible. And I think that the ideal customer journey is all orientated around speed. And so, in fact, I think e-commerce has almost become quite obsessive at all levels by speed. You know, how fast do you get an order acknowledgement? You know, how much communication can I get about where my thing is? I want to know where the truck driver. I want to know how many stops people are on in front of me. I want to know that the guy down the road has got his package, because that means mine 6 away, and I want that in real time. You know, so I actually think that's not an extreme word. I think that you know, that e-commerce has become quite obsessive about speed and compressing the time to get things into your hand. But that's the instant tactility of going to a store and having something immediately that you come away with. There's a real kind of anti-climax if you decide on a particular purchase. I don't mean kind of everyday stuff that you buy by scrolling through with your thumb. I mean, you know, you decide to buy something, you buy it online, then there's this kind of lag before it comes, where there's kind of anti-climax of, am I dealing with the right kind of person online? Am I, you know, is it going to come? Is it going to make it? Is it going to get damaged? You know, so the shorter you can make that, the less anti-climax there is, you know.
and we did this last weekend. Like, we went to go buy some lights and also a couple of tripods. And, you know, we fidgeted around in a bunch of different stores and tried to find the right solution on both sides, right? So for the and in the end, we were just like, okay, we don't understand lighting yet. Let's leave the lights here. We actually went physical shopping. And then we said, okay, we'll take this tripod and that tripod, after walking around for like an hour. And the guy in the store said, we're out of stock. And it was so maddening. And what's really funny is that he always says the same thing. We can order that for you. And you kind of like leave indignantly. We're leaving. You still have nothing, but you also have no prospect for having anything. Like, we probably have it now if we just ordered it last Saturday. You know what I mean? So that speed is actually really important. The immediacy, and you're right, that tactile feeling of, I decided, I have it. And when you're online, they build that anticipation into it. 1 hour delivery, right? 1 day delivery. You're like,
Yeah.
yes.
Or even when you're scrolling down and you're seeing something, 5 in stock, 2 in stock, available now, back order, because you wouldn't have zoned into that particular tripod if you'd known that the guy didn't have them, because
I wouldn't even have
you
asked.
couldn't buy it.
Yeah.
No, you wouldn't even ask. It's like, well, I like that one, but I can't buy that one. So having that kind of maybe bricks and mortar store should give everyone like a Google Lens or some kind of heads up display as you go in. You can just look around and you just see what stuff's in stock.
Actually, that was an idea that we
had that
talked about, right?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I think I may have got that from one of your podcasts.
That's really cool.
If you say Hyperloop, I'm gonna go crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I said that in my sleep.
Actually, like we often talk about like the connection between offline and online, and like stop talking about e-commerce or offline commerce, but just commerce, like as one word. So this is kind of like one of an idea of what we talked about before. But I know that, for example, for myself, when I go to I prefer to spend 2 hours to go to the shop, get my stuff and come back home than taking just 5 minutes to buy on the website and get delivered in 3 days, because I'm just going to have in 2 hours. I'm just going to have the item in 2 hours. So sometimes if I have a choice, I would prefer going to the shop myself. Even if it's
I think that there's a real kind of merged complexity now, where you've got e-commerce, which for many is considered, this destroying bricks and mortar retail, and is this kind of separated thing. But the reality of it is, like everything in life, it's all kind of merged together.
Yeah.
Bricks and mortar retailers are still packing packages in their back room of things that they're taking from their store and putting into parcels or from their distribution center and sending them to clients, to end users through e-commerce, and delighted by those sales because they can pick and pack a bunch of stuff instead of dealing with people coming in and taking 2 hours to choose 2 damn tripods they haven't even got in stock.
I hate those people.
Or in that time they can pick and pack and dispatch a bunch of stuff. So there is really this merge, and we spend a lot of time with our clients who are e-commerce sellers on that journey of saying, okay, well, one of your options at your endpoint of succeeding in your selling journey is to add physical product into stores as well as selling that online. Once you've gone through the zone of, okay, well, I'm on an e-platform like a platform like Amazon or on eBay, I've got my stuff on a platform, I've got my own B2C selling website as well, on Shopify or on DrTech or wherever you might put that, where I'm selling things directly. What do you do now? Well, let's see if I can get things into stores, because it gives credibility to your products. It gives a certain gravitas to the fact that these things are real and they're in a store.
Yeah.
Whether or not those people then go off and buy them online. You might go and buy that tripod that you liked online, but you saw that, you touched that in a store. So I think that's where the two elements of the industries collide, and I think there'll be a real hybrid model for a lot of products moving forwards, where you have a showroom type approach, irrespective of whether those retailers are thinking, I can see that guy's taking a photo of the damn SKU number and he's going to go and buy it online, or whether actually that element of things is embraced and you say, yeah, this is a showcase for products, and you may well go and buy it online, or you may go and buy it from me. It doesn't matter.
So I feel like a lot of people that get into e-commerce today just want to they want to build an entirely digital experience. And I'm curious, again, from your perspective, when you're advising or talking to e-commerce shop owners that, let's say, want to expand into a different country, and you make that recommendation to them. I'm a big believer in hybrid, right? So I don't need to be convinced. But when you make that recommendation to them, and I know plenty of people that build e-commerce stores and they're like, my stuff's never going to be on a shelf. The only shelf it's going to sit on is in a warehouse. But when you do that, and when you talk to them about just like the conversion rates are associated with being able to go see the product, or the fact that it sits on a store shelf, which gives you it gives it credibility and gravitas. It's like, I saw that in a store. What kind of pushback do you get? And like, what does it take to convince somebody who doesn't believe in the hybrid model to then move them to that space?
Well, I think the key element to that is that the best advice that we can give to a client, to a seller, to an end user, to a seller, to expand their businesses, to increase the amount of their traffic and their reach. The fastest and easiest way of doing that is by adding more countries, by expanding your reach by internationalization. Now, the downside of that is that the hybrid model then becomes quite cumbersome when you put it into those perspective. If you guys are in Bangkok and you want to go and see something, you can go to a store and you can go and you've got the whole hybrid model there in this neat, well, in one of the biggest cities on the planet, but nonetheless, you can do all of those things.
Right.
If you want to then expand that and say, well, I want to go and selling not just in Thailand, I want to go sell in Europe, I want to sell in the US, I want to sell in Canada, I want to sell in all the key e-commerce markets on the planet, you're probably going to lack that hybrid approach. And so giving, protracting a digital ability to be able to see and touch the products, give that tactility that you like from going in store in any way, shape or form. And in fact, through the pandemic, the automotive industry has absolutely revolutionized that tactile approach to hybrid selling. People can't go to the showrooms, they can't go and test drive cars, they can't do that. And it's taken them 6-9 months to really refresh the entire journey of how they do it. So what was traditionally a configurator, just so you can see as building up an online quote, is now real granular detail about every little option and color and configuration and things that you can do, and you can see things in 4D and all that kind of stuff is really cool and adds to that hybrid experience that I think you can only get if it's convenient, or else for that retailer, a big company, a big seller might be able to replicate that hybrid approach in cities all around the world, an Apple store or a type of organization that could be able to give you that showroom approach. But for your average e-commerce seller, they're not going to be able to do that. They've got to take a different route.
But that's very interesting. To be honest, having was a very interesting conversation, and maybe one idea for DrTech is tomorrow to open physical stores, right? And to put some of my best selling products inside of it, right? We should open a physical store in Paris for we do a pop-up store for 2 weeks, for example, and we put inside of it our 10 best sellers online, but we put their products offline, and let's see what happens.
I think you could definitely see an approach whereby more kind of online showcase type venues might pop up in larger, urban conurbations. So for you in where you guys are in cities where there's a mass of people, so you'd get the most amount of reach, where you could be a bit more tactile with the stuff that you want to see, and maybe sellers would group together and allow their products to be shown in a store, but they were exclusively then sold online, or the route to purchase might be slightly different. Had you gone to that store for those tripods, knowing full well that you weren't going to come home with that kit, that you were making an informed buying decision, that might have changed your disappointment of coming out thinking, damn it, I've just wasted my time, which you hadn't, because you've made an informed choice.
Yeah, and this always brings me back to the same question about shopping is social, right? So we went and we did this together over the weekend just to go see what do we want to get? What do we want to buy and stuff like that. And even though we left with no product, we still had fun, right? We also ran into a friend of mine in the store, which you can never do online, right? And I'm always curious about how to replicate, and I'm curious what you see, right? Because you see way more than what I see in this space, but how do you replicate that social part of shopping where you just sort of serendipitously run into your girlfriend or your guy friend or whatever at the shop and just what are you buying? That guy was buying lights. That's a real thing. That actually happened over the weekend. And it was just kind of cool to have that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think from an e-commerce perspective, it's very to see beyond, that kind of share wish list style element of adding more people into the decision process. That element of purchase at the moment, especially where things have gone very mobile rather than desktop, that makes the whole experience much more instantly, because it instantly shrinks it down to a tablet or to a cell phone. And I think that you're right, absolutely takes away some of that social element. And of course, the internet is a glorious and wonderful place when it comes to meeting people. And again, that that flavor of internationalization is there, but I don't think those two things are joined together yet at this point. But I'm pretty sure that you could have met your friend's girlfriend online if you did it in a different way round, but perhaps not in the buying experience.
Is there a way to combine Tinder
Yeah,
with
exactly.
DrTech?
You could swipe by products.
No,
Yeah,
swipe by people in product. It's like that would look great on her. This would look great on him, kind of thing. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure Martin wants to cut this podcast short so he can go off and start coding that.
Yeah, guys, I'm just gonna leave you here and I'm just gonna go walk.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, every time we do this show, we come up with these ridiculous ideas and then we end up implementing them somehow. Anyway,
sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
No idea is ridiculous. No idea.
It's not though, right?
Until somebody do it, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, but like I really like what you just say between like all the social part of it and also like all the offline and online connection. And my next question would be like, based on everything that you see for so many years in the e-commerce space and everything that you handle every day with your customers, like to be, like helping them with their e-commerce journey, is there something else that you see that is missing, some innovation that you would like to have, or some gap in the market? And I love that. And I know that Michael always loves this idea of the umbrella company, like kind of like Apple, for example, that launch their product and as they are at a higher scale, then they leave room and opportunity for a bunch of other brands to just go under them and sell smartphone as well, but for a cheaper price, where Apple doesn't go. And I think we have the same example with Amazon FBA, who left like a lot of space for people to do the same, but for non-Amazon brands. And so from your perspective, from where you are, do you see some innovation that you would like to have, some gap in the market?
I would love to see being involved in this kind of middle part. Global commerce experts helps fundamentally break down barriers to increase international trade through compliance and tax compliance, and as well as the fulfillment and account management side of things, label compliance. So those parts are right from the beginning. Am I allowed to sell in this particular region, country? Am I ready to sell in that particular region, country? Translations, preparation for the right platforms and things like that, and then the ongoing fulfillment. So we sit in the middle part of the ecosystem. And I think one of the things that the industry needs to address and do something better with is waste and return. That there must be a more sustainable and worthy way of dealing with the returns and the discarded items, which might come to your door with nothing wrong with it beyond, oh, that wasn't what I wanted, or wasn't what I was expecting.
Right.
And and that's endemic in the clothing industry as well as within e-commerce. But there's a huge amount of waste, and I think that there have been some stabs in the market and some attempts at which haven't really got real traction. They need support from above as well as from below. But I think there's some real opportunity to smarten up the act within e-commerce and better kind of reuse the returned and excess that comes from this part of the industry. Because one of the things that compressing the time down, one of the things of giving someone this kind of instant ability using their thumb to make fast and furious decisions is waste and mistakes. Order the wrong thing, order the wrong type, buy the wrong thing, get drawn into some kind of clickbait interesting, innovative titling of a product that isn't actually what you want, and one of the beauties of buying from a big online selling platform is that you know what's going to happen. If I don't like it, I know I'm going to get my money back. I know I can return it. I know I can get it. I can get that sent back within a day. That's no problem. I'm comfortable with that. But with very little thought process of what the hell happens to that stuff after. Well, where does it go? What happens to it? And the reality of the situation is there's an opportunity there in doing that. And some retailers have been highly sustainable in their attempts to try and do things with that, but the scale is astronomical. and as e-commerce grows, it grows disproportionately alongside it.
Right.
I think it's a real opportunity.
You make a real interesting point. Like in the old days, you'd go to a store and they'd say, would you like me to wrap that and put it in a bag for you? And as people became more aware of the environmental impact of the excess packaging, they would say, no, I'll just take it like this. But when you buy something from an e-commerce seller, it normally comes, bubble wrapped in a box with extra paper to protect it. And I know this is not the only thing that you're talking about, but it would be really cool if you could get like some kind of discount if you opened it right, or if you agreed to open it right away, take it out, give the packaging back so that they could either go and reuse it or recycle it. But returns as well still remain really tricky. You're right. And it's a big gap in the market. I remember I bought some memory. I want to upgrade the memory on my Mac, and I bought some memory and I got it and I installed it. And it didn't work. It was the wrong type of memory. I still have it. That was like 15 years ago. I still have it. There was nothing to do with it. And I wasn't going to throw it away because it felt like that was the wrong thing to do. But sending it back was not easy because I lived in Japan and I bought it from the United States. It was just a mess. So it's a big gap, I think.
Yeah. So I think, so not just from the practical, consumerist approach of what resources are going into there, but I think this fast and furious approach is exacerbating the problem. And internationalization is exacerbating the problem, especially when it comes to, in Europe with Brexit. You buy something from the UK that gets shipped into France, that seller's like, this is great. I just sold some stuff to a Frenchman. Yay. And then the Frenchman says, no, this is no good for us. We need to send that back. All of a sudden, that's been exported from the UK into the EU. There's tax and duty paid. It's cleared customs. Is it a customs declaration? And that client, that end user says, oh, actually, well, can we just take this back? Well, you can pretty much know what happens to that. It doesn't come back.
No.
Yeah.
It languishes in a warehouse for some time, owned by the person who's done it because that's debited from their account, only for that warehouse to eventually say, it's 2021. There's no space left in warehouses anymore. What do you want to do with this stuff?
Right.
And amazingly, a lot of that stuff ends up in a dumpster. We've got to do a better job than that. And this business in particular is hell-bent on giving some more environmentally respectful and mature routes to those options of return, because it's only going to get worse otherwise. So I think that both there's opportunity and there's a need to nip in the bud a growing issue.
That's very interesting what you said, the example that you gave between the UK and France, because I think we have the exact same problem here in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know the law about the customs and stuff like that in Southeast Asia, but I can definitely imagine that it works more like the relationship between UK and France than the relationship between France and Germany.
Yeah.
And so if you export something from Thailand to Cambodia, and the guy in Cambodia doesn't want it, I think there is no return policy at all.
He just goes in the lake.
It just doesn't exist, right? And which means that in a region like ours here, it must be like something that is either people just don't sell cross-border because it's just so hard, or they just like don't have very good return policies or stuff like that. So it must be like at a bigger scale in Southeast Asia, or maybe like in Africa or stuff like that. So I can definitely see the market for that. Maybe it can be huge.
And that's one thing that makes someone stop and say, well, hey, look, for a particular purchase, I'm not going to do that online. I need to go to a store, or I need that security that my hard-earned cash isn't going to get lost, wasted, irreplaceably removed from my keeping. As in, as a seller, if I have to, because of a terms and arrangement, give some kind of returns policy or refund to the buyer, and that's only fair if there's something wrong with it. That's only fair. As a consumer, you'd want to make sure that right was there. If you know full well that that piece of stock is lost and a write-off, well, that changes your business model. That drives up costs, and not to mention the waste. The commercial decision is suicide, let alone the environmental impact. So I think there's some real work to be done there, and it's a conundrum. No one's solved it properly yet. People have danced around the edges with clothing and that end of the industry, which is really a bit more mature in terms of of the volumes of returns. But I think it needs one of the giants to really approach the way that it does that, and it needs the attitude of the buyer to become a slightly more mature. we've got kind of fallen into this. I can get this tomorrow. I can just
Right.
flick with my thumb and buy what I want when I'm in the restroom. Because kind of. So I think that's the next big step in terms of the maturity of the industry.
Do you see sellers, let's just say in the United States, that have been successful? Let's say very successful, right? So they're not like the biggest sellers in the world, but they've been very, very successful. They're running like, what would it be? 8-digit businesses, right? And then they think, I want to then expand my markets. Like you said, let's just go to Europe, which is what most Americans would do just because it's closer and they understand it. And maybe they have a grandfather who lives in Italy or something, right? Do they first try to go do it themselves? Because they're like, I'm really successful. I'm pretty smart. I did this on my own here. I'll just replicate this business model over there. And then they muck it up because they don't understand the regulatory issues, the payment issues, all these types of things. And then they come to you to solve those things. Like, are they surprised by the complexity of internationalization?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is yes. Typically, a seller of that size, 8-9-digit online seller,
right,
on a platform, for instance, they would certainly be, and we do have some of those in our client portfolio, especially if they're in a small number of SKUs, relatively simple product. I have a lot of those in supplements and
right,
health supplement type things, fitness supplements.
right.
Very, very high turnover, very small number of SKUs. Those things are ideal for internationalization. And I think initially there's this feeling of, and especially from an American perspective,
For sure.
oh, well, I can do it here. I can do that anyway.
Right.
I can do that anywhere, no problem. And
Typical.
so I think that. Is that how it came across?
No, that's me as an American saying that. I can say whatever I want.
That's not the case at all. But I think there is generally, there's a can-do, we can do anything attitude from that side of things, especially from a successful entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
Especially from a successful entrepreneur that's used to breaking down barriers and used to smashing down things that are stopping them from proceeding. So I think there is often an eye-opening moment when those clients come to us and we explain what might need to happen in terms of, to be compliant. Some of those, of course, choose just to crack on and go and do that anyway, because people will buy what they want to buy, irrespective of whether they are legally compliant. We offer a service where we'll say, right, we can make sure that your product's compliant, your labels are compliant, so we're collect all the tax and revenue that's required to go to the right place is being done, and you're declaring those things in the right way, and then you're ready to go and trade. And it's not actually that cumbersome. That person could go and do that, but typically they prefer a one-stop shop to say, could you just sort all this stuff out for me? You just get me ready for market, and in 2 months, give us a shout, and we'll start shipping some stuff into your warehouse. Happy days. So, I do think that there's perhaps, well, it's just an unknown, isn't it? It's definitely, it's not a naivety. This business, these are smart, successful people.
Yeah.
It's just the nuances. I wouldn't. Interesting. Just before we started, there we were talking about running podcasts in different languages. Well, I couldn't do that. I couldn't. It's just an unknown. And it's not because I'm stupid. It's because I don't speak Japanese.
Why?
Why do I not speak Japanese?
I don't understand why.
So, I think it's just it's an educational element to it, and for us, helping those sellers expand is our mantra and our mission statement. So some of that starts with advice that lends itself then naturally into provision of service. Sometimes it just starts with that advice, and that's that. Inevitably, cultural differences, geographical distances. A long journey for a guy in England is like going to fetch milk in Texas or in China. Just cultural and geographic differences before you get into bureaucratic or political differences of what you can and can't sell. So I think, but what's absolutely apparent in the last 3 to 5 years in particular is the acceleration of international acceptance. that the e-commerce world has changed. When you go and buy something online, arguably, if it's done well and the approach is seamless, you don't necessarily need to know, care, or worry about where you're buying that from. If that seller's got credibility and they've got those, if I was a highly credible, and of course I am, seller online, and you were buying something in Thailand and my stock was held and provisioned in Thailand in a 3PL warehouse facility, and it could come to you the next day, it wouldn't matter to you that I may have been based in the UK. Now, the irony of that and the global economy, of course, is that your hard-earned money that you're making in where you guys are is finding its way through some payment gateway back to the UK, and I'm paying my taxes on it, and then I'm spending that in my local store near my home in the UK. And so the economy becomes truly global,
right,
not via large banking institutions, but on a micro basis, because Martin's Thai bahts in where you are that you've earned can turn up in pound sterling somewhere in the UK and buy some gifts for my kids. Well, that was a much more macro trade, even just sort of 5 or 6 years ago, where that money ostensibly needed to go via a bank, and then you made a currency exchange, and there were margins in various different places. And so I think that element of things is has definitely advanced, really not by accident, but it's kind of expanded out from the last few years in real anger. I think anger, it's not angry, of course, but with pace,
with real speed. Yeah.
Do you think the government kind of kind of lost track because it went fast? It went too fast for them, and they could not comply with the regulations, the rules, and stuff like that.
I think they did. I think the Europeans, I don't know how the situation is from an Asian perspective where you guys stand, but from a European perspective, the law in terms of tax compliance and regulatory compliance has really clamped down in the last 24, 36 months, in things where, the practice of, let's say, Asian sellers drop shipping items under the customs radar with a little ticket on saying it was, a gift or something that came underneath the customs duty radar. These things were just falling into the country.
Right.
And, that consumer had no rights, no ability to return, nothing to go back to. And of course, there was those funds are being released from the economy to wherever they're going, because that person's paying that money and it's being released. I think what's happened certainly in the last year or so with the introduction within Europe of one-stop shop tax affairs and things like that, whereby there's a real onus on the place that's selling, so the platform that's selling. Amazon have got really hot on this in Europe, whereby the platform that's selling takes joint responsibility for making sure that the taxes are being paid, that the products are compliant, and they can be ruthless with those sellers just to delist those things. So I think that the industry did absolutely run away with governments across the world, and I think it's really only in the last 24, 48 months, 36 months. I'm sure they've been planning it for a long time beforehand and debating it for a long time, but nonetheless, I think those things have been implicated within the European market. I'm not so sure where you guys stand from an Asian market perspective.
Yeah, I really saw a lot of new stuff on the regulatory parts. As you say, the last 12 to 24 months, but before that it was
it was like the Wild West.
It was the Wild West. You could completely do whatever you wanted in the e-commerce, and for many years, and many brands used that to reduce cost a lot, because when you don't need to pay the VAT in France, that's great. Right? That's really great when you put your product into a gift card box and you don't need to pay the custom tax. That's another great economy, right? So then you can, of course, then sell your products much cheaper, and then it's an unfair competition to the local sellers. And for many years, people have been able to use that at their advantage, I think.
There were some people in Thailand, actually, and probably not just in Thailand, but they would literally get on a plane with their friends and go to Japan and just fill their suitcases with whatever the limit was for whatever the product. They'd if it was 10,000, they'd come back with 9,999 things. And then they'd sell them on Instagram. So pay no taxes, pay no import taxes, nothing. And even for stuff that probably should have needed FDA approval, right? So Food and Drug Administration type approval, they just have in their suitcase and say, oh, it's just for me and my mom and my cousin kind of thing. And then come back and sell it on Instagram.
I remember seeing those guys doing that in Dubai at the airport.
Yeah, same thing.
There were so many Asian people being stopped at the airport because they were just like getting so much food from Asia. And of course, like Dubai administration was saying like, no, this is not for your mom and your and your cousin and all your family. That's way too much. And like I saw that happen like, from my eyes for real so many times.
So one of the things that we do see, or that we've noticed, and Martin probably knows more about this than I do, is there's an entire infrastructure, right, of people that buy products in China, even if they're not in China, and then send them to the rest of the world, right? So they build entire e-commerce sites and source things in China and bring them in. Do you see that happening as well? Like, I'm not that connected to the e-commerce businesses in the United States, right? So I know what's happening here. But you see buyers in the US, so e-commerce sellers, actually, sorry, accumulating product from China, which they get shipped to them cheaply and then shipping them to Europe?
Yeah, predominantly, not occasionally, predominantly.
Really?
You'll have a seller in the US who's sourcing their goods from wherever it's suitable for them to source it from, but you know, the manufacturing base of the world from China, and then they bring those containers in, and you know, this business will see inbound containers from China daily from sellers who are based in the US. Now, I think there has been a shift in the last few months. When I say few months, probably a year and a bit, as shipping prices have just rocketed. You know, a container from China, even from one of the bigger ports through into Europe, could be $15,000. That would have been $3,000, $4,000 conservatively, even 2 years ago. So that price difference has made those sellers think ahead a little bit, you know, where, you know, the easy win was a seller with a small pot of money in the US could go to Alibaba, any one of a number of different places, buy a container full of stuff, right, ship it into Europe, list it well, get it ranked well, do their SEO properly, get the traffic to their site, and turn it into cash. That a very complex operation made very simple there, but fundamentally, that was pretty standard fare. What we're seeing a lot of now is, well, hold on a second, I may be paying slightly more, but should I be buying this from Southeastern Europe or somewhere where I can get, very nearly the same degree of quality? Because I think Chinese quality in itself has, in the last decade, has been transformed. Certainly, I would wager slightly less innovation when it comes to electronics, but certainly for more simple products and textiles, Southeastern Europe gives a really good option for those. And of course, those goods are just road freighted across Europe, and there's no import duty. So we have seen quite a bit more reorganization of the supply chain in the last couple of years, quite importantly. And that's, you know, and for some, that's probably slightly disappointing, because it's just as
right.
There's become a real trust and inherent belief in Asian-made product, which for a long time wasn't there. You know, it was the underdog. It may have had quantity and cost, but perhaps didn't have quality and a guaranteed consistency in terms of quality, in terms of products, which I think a lot of that has gone away now, certainly, especially in e-commerce, much more sophisticated. But I do think that will switch back. I do think that will switch back, although perhaps the costs won't as costs from
probably not.
Far East, from a European perspective, continue to increase, perhaps that won't, the cost difference won't be as much as it was before.
If you cannot, this is really interesting to me, but if you're handling a ton of fulfillment, right? Like we talked at the beginning of this, I think it was when we were online already, about the warehousing and all that kind of stuff. Do you feel like you can see product trends maybe before they become super obvious to everybody else because of all the consolidated data that you see? And if you do,
yeah, the insights are quite fascinating.
Yeah, so if the insights are there, correct? Because that must be really cool. Where you're thinking, I think I know what the biggest Christmas present's going to be because I can see what's shipping already, kind of thing, right? I know that's simplifying it. But if that's the case, is there also part of the business that then makes product recommendations to sellers and say, I see this thing is trending, maybe you should put this on your site, or maybe you should be one of the sellers that's doing this, or even just like price trends, like there's going to be heavy inflation in this type of product, maybe you should resource it over here. Do you provide that kind of service as well?
Yeah, we do quite a lot of insights for our existing clients, where we will certainly give, for our account management clients who we're looking after, so we have a vested interest or obligation or responsibility for increasing their sales.
Interesting.
We'll certainly use those insights to give them some detail on what is and what isn't selling.
Right.
The financial side of things, and what things are selling for, that's slightly more sensitive, because of course that data comes from perhaps handling their tax affairs, whereby we would need to get a manifest of what's been sold.
Right.
That obviously needs, that's very private data,
of course,
so that has to be handled in a very different way. But we certainly can gain broad oversights of what kind of SKUs are selling. But tomorrow we're receiving into our warehouse in the UK the big thing for this Christmas for the UK and European market.
You are.
So we know that that's coming. I'm not going to say what that is, but we're receiving truckloads of those tomorrow, and then we're being ready to fulfill them. But it's interesting. All the staff here, are okay. Well, we want to get our hands on one first, because we know that we're not going to be able to get one of those for our kids when it comes to December. Those things are going to be crazy to go and get hold of. So, yeah, there is an element of that. Although I think we're always one step behind, because although we might see that at the point of fulfillment, somebody's already bought a ton of those, developed them, made a relationship with a manufacturer, put them in a container, and shipped them through the Suez Canal when it's not blocked by a ship that's gone sideways, brought them into Europe, cleared them into customs, and they've arrived into our warehouse. We may have handled the shipping for them, but nonetheless, when those goods then come out of their, and they're checked for compliancy to make sure that their labels are checked and we're comfortable that they should be sold in the UK and the EU, that's when you sort of think, yeah, I saw this one on, in a newsletter, or I read this in a magazine, or something along those lines. So there is an element of that, but I think being in the stage of being able to capitalize on that is a slightly more hit and miss, I think. I think you need to have a bit more insight, because we're in the middle of the ecosystem. So you need to understand what was going on at the other end. It's a bit more speculative when it's comes before us.
For sure.
We can agree and think, yeah, you're damn right, you're going to sell a ton of those.
but maybe not, right? But do you think
but who knows?
I mean, you've been at this for a long time, right? So you've got years and years of data, and you'll keep accumulating data. Do you ever think about like publishing reports, like thought leadership reports, and saying, you know what I mean? All anonymized, right? So not like this guy sold that thing or this shop sold that thing, but just so you know, kind of thing, over the last 10 years, here are some trends that we've seen, and we've seen them accelerating over the past 2 years. And in the past year, it's just gone hockey stick kind of thing, or vice versa. Do you ever think about publishing that kind of stuff?
Rightly or wrongly, we do create those reports and that insight, but we choose to keep those as an asset for being a client of ours.
Yep, fair enough.
So, because otherwise we can't sell that data. It doesn't really belong to us, apart from how we're portraying that data. Right. So we use that as as a retention come added strong benefit to give insights to those clients.
Yeah.
So yes, we do. There are places that publish it, and there are pieces of information that we'll push out on social media as an incentive to be, to use services. But it's just kind of one of the things that comes as a package of going to an expert organization that can help you grow your business internationally.
I love it.
For us, we feel that's the most powerful way of putting that anonymous data to good use, because they're general trends in essence.
Got it.
You have my email address, Riki, so feel free to email that to me if you want.
Yes, no problem. No problem.
That's not gonna. I just want to know what the big Christmas present's gonna be.
But do you have some customers also in Asia? Customer from Asia?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I think onboarding Chinese sellers in particular has become a big process over the last year. And not because that's only as it started, that's really as Global eCommerce Experts has become intrinsically interested and ready to attack the Chinese market. We have a number of Korean clients. We have a few Japanese clients, increasingly a lot of Chinese sellers. And I know I overheard a stat when I was talking to Amazon a few weeks ago that they're onboarding 2,000 new Chinese sellers a day. And that's one of the reasons, a day, because that's sellers. And of course, all of those sellers will then run through Amazon's mill. I don't need to wish to deal too much from an Amazon perspective, but what they'll do is make sure that they run through the mill in terms of compliance, tax compliance, product compliance, and responsible person service, to mean that there's a place or a physical tactile address in within the UK and the EU that somebody can refer to, return the goods to, and that's those are all services that we provide. So it's very useful from that side of things.
Right.
But there's a lot of Asian sellers who are growing into the UK and the EU, disproportionately more than those doing it in the other direction.
For sure.
And I don't really think there's no good reason. Our business hasn't really attacked giving clients who have been monstrously successful selling 8-9 figure sellers online, maybe even from their home, haven't even scratched the surface of the billions of people who are ready to buy in Asia. And it's weird.
I was going to ask you that, like, there must be a massive market as GDP per capita in Southeast Asia, in China, in India, for those people who can't travel or just don't have time to travel to Paris, to Germany, to the UK to buy things, but definitely want products from there, whether it's stuff from Harrods or stuff from, Jermyn Street or wherever, and then just say, hey, ship it to me so I can look like I'm wearing an English suit, or, what I mean? That's got to be a multi-billion-dollar business, no?
Well, I think that kind of concierge level of what you described there, of I want to, at the high end, that does exist. That part of things is relatively easy when it comes to that.
Those are the only sellers I know. I think I've just outed myself.
I think that, and actually for multinational sellers who have maybe bricks and mortar, for them, that's easy. What's much more tricky is for like those 9-figure supplement sellers that I was telling you from the States earlier on. Selling in Asia is way down the list, but the opportunity
is huge.
Probably outweighs anything that they've already done. But there's a very tricky point of intake when it comes to Western sellers starting to sell in Asia. And so I think that there's a real opportunity from this business's perspective, because the data and the stats of who's buying what, which we don't have a lot of, so we're taking that from elsewhere, because that's not data that we own, that we gather ourselves.
Right.
But what we do know is the number of sellers who are selling in Asia who are coming to the UK and the EU. That part's fact. We know those details.
Right.
we do very little in the other direction. And I find that curious sometimes. I think it's just, for an American wanting to go international, well, let's go to English speaking countries first.
Correct.
I can understand them, just a little bit more trust because I can actually communicate. I can read stuff. People can read my things. And then you go into, okay, let's go for some slightly more obscure European languages. Gets a bit more weird, talking to French people, talking to German people, big markets. Yeah, Martin, I'm not saying that French people are weird. You're not that weird. But what I mean is,
I'll say it.
There's that, but there's that, element of, of just the unknown, like you said earlier on about the, not necessarily these people being stupid, just as not knowing.
Right.
And then you suddenly get into Middle East, Arabic dialects and letters come into, through into Asia, alphabets that we don't understand, much more complex ways of trading, very different political systems, I think that probably what puts people off. But my goodness me, the opportunity is just vast.
That's super interesting.
That's super interesting. And I think that's probably a great way to end this show.
Yeah.
I think we left a lot of stuff on the table, Riki. We're going to have you or one of your partners back on the show again. Thank you so much for doing this today, man. You were a hero.
Oh, thanks. I've really enjoyed it. It's great talking to you guys.